January of 1862, an entire American town vanished in a single night. Not abandoned, not evacuated, erased. Every building, every fence, every trace of daily life, swallowed by a wall of water so powerful it rewrote the land itself. But here's what makes no sense. The people came back. They rebuilt 1 mile upstream, same river, same danger. And they called their new town Grafton. Today, this is the most photographed ghost town in America. You've seen it in Butch Cassidy and the Sundance Kid, that lonely white church beneath the towering red cliffs. You've seen it. You just never knew what it survived. Millions recognize its image. Almost no one knows why it died 3 separate times, or why, even now, visitors still swear they hear children playing in an empty cemetery. This isn't a story about a lost town. This is a story about a town that refused to disappear. And before we're done, you'll understand why some places feel haunted not by ghosts, but by the choices people were forced to make. December 1859. 5 Mormon families arrive in this valley with a mission that sounds impossible today. Grow cotton in the desert, not for profit, not for comfort, but for survival. Brigham Young believed a civil war was coming, that the South would burn, that cotton supplies would collapse. So he sent his families, led by Nathan Tenney, into one of the harshest landscapes in the Utah Territory with a single command: make it work, or we all starve. They called the settlement Wheeler. They carved irrigation canals by hand into baked turf. They planted cotton exactly as ordered, but the land demanded payment. Walk through the Grafton Cemetery today. Count the graves. 80 souls lie here. Most of them are children. Mary Louisa Berry, age 3. John Franklin Squires, age 7. Elizabeth Jane Wood, 11 months old. Diphtheria, scarlet fever. Diseases swept through one-room cabins faster than help could ever arrive. Imagine being a parent here. You wait to your child coughing. You recognize the sound. You heard it weeks ago in your neighbor's home. Their child is already buried on the hill. There is no doctor, no medicine, just prayer and red dust. The valley was beautiful. The soil was rich, but the land did not welcome them. And in 1862, it would test that truth. January 8, 1862, it hadn't just rained. For weeks, the sky seemed to empty itself across the American West. Rivers overflowed, valleys drowned. And here, the Virgin River, usually a quiet stream, became something unrecognizable. That night, families went to bed hearing a roar louder than anything they'd known. The sound felt wrong, like the ground itself tearing open. Some didn't sleep. Mothers held children. Fathers stood at windows, watching the darkness. And then it came, a 30-foot wall of mud. Trees and debris burst from the riverbanks. Buildings didn't flood. They came apart. Foundations torn loose. Roofs ripped away and carried downstream. Families ran barefoot into freezing darkness, clutching wet blankets and screaming children, watching everything they owned disappear into black water. At dawn, there was nothing. No homes, no crops, no fences, just mud, and people standing where their lives used to be. 1 year of work, gone in for hours. Most people would have left. Most communities would have understood the message. Go. But Nathan Tenney stood in that wreckage and said, "The river took our homes. It didn't take us. They moved 1 mile upstream, 15 feet high, and they built again. They named it Grafton, not as defiance, but as belief. That belief would shape everything that followed. When survival looked like success, by 1864, Grafton looked like a miracle. 168 people, orchards blooming, a schoolhouse standing strong. For a moment, it felt like the gamble had paid off. Then the war ended, and the reason they were sent here vanished. The cotton mission was over. The sacrifices remained. Then came violence. Raids swept nearby settlements. Robert Berry, who had already buried his 3-year-old daughter, was shot while defending his cattle. The land had taken his child. Now it took him. Fear spread faster than the river ever had. In 1866, families left again. Grafton became a ghost town for the first time. When progress decides. When families returned years later, the danger wasn't water or war. It was reality. There was nowhere left to grow. Children became adults. They looked at the cliffs, the river, the limit sand chose elsewhere. Then came the final irony. Grafton's own men helped build the Hurricane Canal. They dug the waterway that carried opportunity away from their town, not out of betrayal, out of necessity. By 1944, the last resident locked the door and walked away. Grafton didn't die because it failed. It faded because the world no longer needed it. Grafton reminds us that home isn't permanent. If this story stayed with you, the next one will unsettle you even more. A town that vanished overnight, and the government tried to erase it completely. Subscribe to hear that story. Today, Grafton is a destination. People take photos where families once stood in silence over small graves. But when the sun dips behind the red cliffs and shadows stretch across the schoolhouse floor, you feel it. Those aren't just ghosts. They're echoes. Grafton didn't vanish in one night. It vanished every time a family had to choose between belief and survival. The buildings are empty, but the story is still here. Written in dust, written in memory,